Hello guys, today we're going to be discussing the Ammoon 8-channel audio mixer, and what we're going to do is we're going to take it apart and we're going to look at channel 1 and 2, which are independent from the other main channels. There's two boards inside. One is the main board, which go all the way to the right side, but on the left side you have two channels that are independent. They're just connected with a little connector. So we're going to start by removing the four front screws. So you can use an electric screwdriver or a hand screwdriver, but just be careful, don't strip the screws. The first time you do this, it will be a bit awkward because they'll have a lot of torque on them, so just be careful. Use the right bits. And after you remove these four screws here, we're going to flip the unit. And we'll turn it around, and then we'll see all the other screws in the back. And pay attention to this connector, the power connector area there. I recommend you start removing the screws from there and then going around in a circle. Just the reason why is because that area has a lot of torque for some reason on the screws. So just go ahead and do that and take it easy removing them. Go around in a circle very slowly until you have all the screws removed. After you remove all the screws, put them aside and then flip the console over again. And you can see here I'm using a piece of foam. That way it doesn't hurt the bottom of the board after you remove the cover. The reason why you don't want to put the mixer with its buttons down on the table is because the buttons are all plastic, so they'll break very easily. So you don't want to do that. So at any rate, after removing all the screws, we flip it around, and now we have to remove the screws of the XLR connector. And there's also the 1/4 ends. You have to remove the washers and the that's there. So we'll go ahead and use a socket to remove it. If you need to know the socket number, I'll give it to you. Just leave a question or a little comment, and I'll put it in there for you. So, anyways, I have an extension arm, and with a little ratchet, and we'll go ahead and remove these. There's a nut there in the washer. And the reason why we're doing this is because this actually holds the board, the XLR connector and the 1/4 connector to the actual top of the board of the mixer. So you have to remove it, or you won't be able to remove the channels. And after this, we'll go ahead and start working on the buttons. Now, the buttons themselves are all plastic, so some of them might be hard to remove. So I use a little screwdriver at the bottom of it to help it push up. But mine, I found them pretty easy to remove. They just pop off very easily. They're all indented to the socket shape of the potentiometer, so you shouldn't have a problem putting them back in. They only go one way. Okay, and after this, we get down to the faders. The faders, you pinch them like a little grasping tool and just bring them up. They're very easy to remove. Also very easy to put it back too. So once those are out, you can put them in the middle. Slide the faders up to the middle if you want. Just makes it easy to remove. And then we flip the board back again, and now we have a set of screws to remove. And you can see that the first channel 1 and 2 is the green board. It's actually separated from the other main board, and it's connected together, I should say, with the little connector there. Now the connector is glued. Okay, so there's glue on top of the connector, so you have to remove the glue before you pull the connector. So remove all the screws from the channel from the back of it. Once you remove the screws, we work on the connector. So we'll go ahead and remove them, and just be careful. These screws are a bit bigger, so just be careful removing them. Don't lose them. One thing I found the first time I opened this unit up is they were tightened down pretty hard, so this is my second time opening it, just to let you know. And again, do not flip the mixer over on its buttons. Notice what I'm doing here. It's always on its side. And now I'm showing you here. Here's the instructions. This is a connector. Use a utility knife a blade section of it, and that's what I use to remove the glue. Once you remove a little bit of the glue from both sides of the connector and the middle, you should be able to pull the connector off easily. But at any rate, when you're pulling it, just make sure you wiggle it soft, a little. Don't do it too hard. You might rip the wires out. And there's 2 more screws left here near the connector area. Once these screws are removed, then the channel comes out. In this case, it's channel 1 and 2. They're separated. For some reason, don't ask me why, that's how they did it. So at least if 1 and 2 dies, you don't have to remove the entire other board. It's the same work. You're just removing all the screws. It's nothing. You have the only issue with the other side of the board is there's a lot more buttons to pull out. I recommend you take a picture of the mixer just in case if you forget where the buttons go. But there's also online pictures of it as well, so it doesn't really matter. Okay, we have another section coming up. And this time I took my little action camera, and it's just, generic action camera. And mainly the reason why I did this is to show you an up-closer view of the board. And it's important for you to see it. There's a lot of SMD components on this board. There's also hole-through components, so capacitors on top. The potentiometers are easy to remove. The faders have a little jacket on there, a little dust cap. So they're protected from dust, so that's pretty good. The LEDs can be modified. You can put different lights. Some SMD components, if you want to go that far, they can be swapped out. Here's the XLR and the 1/4 ends at the back. Very easy to solder to. It's all right there in the back of it. You can have modifications for post-EQ direct outs or pre-EQ direct outs. So that's what the board looks like up close. It's cleanly laid out. I mean, it's not that bad. It's pretty good laid out board. One thing you could do if you want, you could do an LED or for me, the LED swap outs, but the best for me is always the direct out, so you gotta have that. And I'll be soon doing that mod to this board on a few channels just to try it out, see how they work like. So you can tap post EQ, pre EQ on the sends. There's a lot of areas you can tap the signal from. So depending on what you want the signal to be affected or not by the EQ. And now we're back here to the regular view. I'm just displaying the fader moving up and down. And we'll be soon going back and putting this thing back together. And this is pretty much how it looks like. So it's very easy to remove and modify. It's all up to you on how far you want these modifications to go. But one thing I found very interesting about this board is how clean it is. The actual soldering. There's no soldering blotches anywhere, which it kind of amazed me because usually these cheaper boards, it's just solder blotches everywhere. So another instruction set coming up. Please pay attention to this. And the reason why I want you to just go through the instructions, just make sure you don't leave anything behind on the board. I don't want you to screw up your mixer. Now, remind yourself that this is not a $5,000 mixer. This is just a $130 mixer. It just what it does. It's a simple mixer. Takes your XLRs in and 1/4 ends and mixes them. Okay, basic 3 EQ. That's it. 3-band EQ. Okay. So, anyways, here is the connector being put back, and I already screwed in the board. One thing when you put the board in, just to be careful with the instructions, is make sure that the PFL buttons are in because they're really floating. They're not very stuck 100% vertically, so they will probably jam up against the board. So use a utility knife to slide them into the holes. Once you do that, put the screws and put the connector back in and flip the board over, and then move the potentiometers all to the left. The reason why I'm doing that is so that way you can start your button placements. They're all going to be perfectly aligned. So you can see here, the faders, you don't have to really do anything. It's just they only go up and down. They don't go side to side. So so that's what I did at the top there with the potentiometers. And now you can just put the little plastic buttons in. That's it. Since they're all to one side, they'll all be lined up. Again, like I said before, it's wise to take a picture of this in case if you mistakenly put the wrong carb button on top of another one. So just in case, you can go online and get a picture of this board, so it doesn't really matter. But I recommend taking a picture of it with your cell phone before you start removing it, before you take it apart. But other than that, I think this project of pre-EQ outs, direct outs, and post-EQ outs can be done very easily. There's a little room on the back of the board underneath, inside the PCB board, on the wall of the mixer on the back, to allow you to get the small, compact 1/4 outs. So it's possible to do that. It shouldn't be too hard to do that. Other than that, I'm just putting everything back together here, and just be careful putting in the faders. They're a little bit finicky. They're not really the strongest faders. And we're almost done here, and it's pretty much almost all back together now. The only thing is now we have to do is put the XLR screws back in, and the actual washers and nut for the 1/4. So at any rate, we're almost finalized here. So we'll flip the board back again. We're going to put the back cover back on. And it has to be done in this sequence, and I'll explain to you why we didn't do the XLR screws yet. Okay, so we go ahead, put this all back together. Now I'm going to show you a longer view this time, because there's a section of the back that has to go on the inside, not the outside. So don't make a mistake. So you can see this is the section that I'm going to demonstrate. So this section goes on the inside, not on the outside, just to let you know. Because you can make a mistake and put it on the outside, and it's not going to look too good. And at any rate, we'll let this finish up here, put all the screws. And then after, we finish up. And now we're going to go ahead and finish off the XLR and the 1/4 input accessories, which is the washer and the nut on top, and then the XLR screws. Now it's important that you do this last, not before, because I'm going to show you why. If you were to do this before, you might have problems with the board laying on the back when you're putting the black screws in on the intersection. So this is why you don't actually do this right after. Okay, so leave this till the end. Now what you're going to do is you're going to use a screwdriver, and you're going to line up the XLR jack very slowly. You're not going to jam your screwdriver in there. And in order for the XLR to sit flush with the top of the mixer. And I'm going to show you here in a second. Here's the screwdriver coming out, and I'm going to place it in the middle between the XLR, and bring it. I'm pushing it towards the down while I'm screwing in the screws, so that as I see the XLR jack rise up, it sits flush. So that's why you have to do it this way. And I'm just moving my finger along just to make sure it's flush with the top. And I think that's about it here. Well, I think we're finalized the reinstallation of the board. Everything's back together. Now, if you wanted to go further and look into the other channels, they all look the same underneath. I took it apart already. I just wanted to show you channel 1 and 2. If you want to look at the other channels, they look the same as channel 1 and 2. There's really no difference. So they're just on one board instead of being separate. Like most higher-end mixing consoles, the channels are individually they get hooked up together. The reason why, if you want to replace a channel, you don't have to replace the entire board. That's the purpose behind it. And that's it. We're almost done here, and the console's back together. We're ready to replay it again. So again, take this with a grain of salt, as I usually say. If you want your direct counts on this board, yes, it can be possible. You're just gonna have to use the 1/4 outs. They're a little bit flat, because if your 1/4 in jack goes in, it will almost touch the board, so you have to be careful with that. Okay, so the jacks have to sit over the board on the back, so you don't create a short circuit there. Okay, and that's it. Thanks for watching. Bye.